What's new in the world of Infor CloudSuite, OpenAI's Atlas browser, and long live SAP ECC. Those are just a few of the topics we'll cover here in episode 246 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 246. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation, including people, process, technology, and strategy sides of transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and we're an independent tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. Thank you for being here today, and joining us, as always, is our co-host, Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for joining us again today.
Of course. I'm super excited for the episode today.
Yeah, likewise. We're actually, if you hear a bit of background noise, I'm actually live on the scene at the Infor Velocity Conference in the United States here in Orlando, Florida. So that's one of the topics we're going to cover here today is we're going to actually go out and talk to several different Infor leaders. We're going to talk to the CEO, Kevin Samuelson. He'll be joining us here in a little bit live from the conference. We'll also talk to Soma, who is the president and chief technology officer of Infor. And we're really going to talk to them about where Infor is headed, how they see themselves fitting into the enterprise tech space longer term, and just what some of the new developments are. And I enjoy coming to conferences like these to learn more about the product roadmap and what customers are saying, what partners are saying, all that good stuff. So we're going to get into that today with Kevin and Soma. And in addition to them, we're going to talk to some Infor partners and customers as well. So we'll have a bunch of people in this episode joining me here in Orlando, Florida. So that should be pretty exciting. And then we're also going to talk about, before I get to that though, before I go back out on the conference floor and start talking to some people, we're going to get into some social media questions that we've received recently. We'll also get into some newsworthy topics, including OpenAI's Atlas browser and how Microsoft is ending volume pricing. And then after that, we'll get into the down on the conference floor discussions. And then later in the show, after we're done chatting with some of the folks here at Infor, we're going to talk about the SAP community. We'll talk about some of the struggles we're seeing with legacy SAP customers that are using ECC and some of the challenges they're having making the jump to S/4HANA, and really want to share with the audience here, especially those of you that are SAP customers, some reasons why you might actually want to stay on ECC and not move forward right away with an S/4HANA implementation. So it's just our way of playing devil's advocate to look at, if you've got a great solution that's working in the SAP community, maybe you stick with it and find some alternative paths for your longer term digital strategy. So those are some of the things we'll talk about here today. But before we get to that, what are some of these social media topics you have for us here today, Darian?
Yeah, some good questions from social media lately. This first one is, Eric, how do you recommend building new internal capabilities without overwhelming people?
Yeah, great question. I remember seeing that question come up on one of the platforms and thought it was a great question. And I think, that was in response to one of my videos where I talked about how important it is to have internal involvement in the project and how your people need to take ownership of their digital transformation and not be overly dependent on outsourcing it to a software vendor or system integrator or technical implementer. So that was the context of where that question came from. And I think the key here is, a lot of times organizations feel a little bit helpless. They feel like they don't know enough about the new technology they're going to be deploying. They're not the experts in digital transformation, so therefore they must need to rely heavily on an outside third-party expert. And while there is some truth to that, it's too easy to go too far down that path. And what I mean by that is you don't want to completely outsource the project to your third-party software vendors or your technical implementers. You want your people to take ownership and be on level footing with those partners. And it's easier said than done. And obviously there's some pre-work you have to do to get there. So the first thing I would say is don't bring in your technical implementer and your software vendor to start doing stuff on day one. make sure you've got a really solid phase zero planning stage where you do get your people mobilized, you get them up to speed, and you give them a chance to catch their breath and really catch up to where we're going to be starting. When we start deploying technology and the vendor comes in, it's really easy to just cede control to them because they're the experts. So if you can get your team in place, mobilize them, and then get them some basic training on the technology they're going to be deploying, get them comfortable at least with the vanilla version of the software, even though it's probably going to change. You're going to configure it differently. You're going to customize it potentially. You're going to use integrations and things like that. And that's all okay, but at least give them enough comfort and confidence to know a little bit about the technology to where they're not too dependent on the technology provider. So those are the two biggest things. Start with phase zero, and within phase zero, make sure you're taking the time to get the team in place, get them up to speed, get them trained on technology, and also get them trained on what digital transformations should look like. That's a big thing we do for our clients is we educate the project teams on what to expect, what are the risks, what are the pitfalls. Let's look at the non-sugar-coated version of digital transformation, which most people haven't seen at this point in the project because they're used to hearing the sales and marketing messaging from software vendors that's so positive and optimistic that then when risks come along, they're surprised by it and blindsided by it. So our job when we do this for clients is to help them identify what some of those risks are and help them know what to prepare for in their projects.
For sure. That's some great points. And our next question today is actually about people within organizations again. So this next question is heroics. I like this word, a lot to unpack. Does this assume that in a chaotic or dysfunctional process, culture, or organization, that each user / person feels like they are on a personal hero's journey, saving the day, day to day?
Yes, I would say that is accurate. I think a lot of organizations don't realize how important these heroes are to their organization until they start to disrupt those heroes' journeys. On one hand, it'd be easy to think that, well, if they're a hero and they're used to saving the day, to use the person's terms, then they're going to jump right into this project, into a new technology project, and be totally on board with it. And that's simply not true. It's usually the opposite. Usually what happens is those people that have all this tribal knowledge, usually they've been around for a long time at the company, 10, 20 years or more. They have built their own workarounds, their own spreadsheets, their own manual processes, their own secret sauce of how they do their jobs. And the minute you start to introduce technology and say, look, Darian, I know you created this new process for yourself. You power through with your heroics and your tribal knowledge and all the stuff you were able to make happen even without the right tool set. Now we're going to give you a tool set that takes away that value, or at least that's the perception. So a lot of times organizations or team members feel threatened by that, thinking, well, that's my whole job, is to save the day. My whole job is to manage this massive complex spreadsheet that no one else can manage. And I know where the bones are buried and where to find the information I need. No one else knows that. Now, if you put new technology in place and suddenly I'm not as valuable in that same way, I'm not going to be as excited about the project. I'm surely not going to support it and be on board with it because it's works against my own perceived self-interest. So what we have to do is make sure that we recognize those heroes and the heroics of the organization and turn it for good, turn it to where they become part of the solution. And you really want to get those people heavily involved, especially if they're open to it. Sometimes those same people that have demonstrated those heroics will flat out resist, in some cases sabotage the project because they're so threatened by it. And those, sometimes you have to have some painful conversations there of maybe that person isn't going to make it long term. Maybe, at some point you're going to move on from that person, which you hope doesn't happen, but sometimes it does. But a majority of the time, I'd say the real issue or the real solution is to get those heroes of the organization, those single points of failure, get them involved in the project because they know so much about your current state. They know so much about the nuances and the things that no one else knows that you kind of need them to be involved. And you want their involvement in designing the future state solution. And ideally, you want to spend a lot of time designing and defining what their job is going to look like going forward and show them how they are still going to be a hero. They're just going to have a different tool set and a better tool set to make them even more heroes or more heroic in the organization longer term.
Yeah, for sure. Some great social media questions. Both of those questions were great. But I'm going to switch gears here and get into the newsworthy articles of the day. This first one is talking about OpenAI and their new Atlas browser. So OpenAI, if you didn't know, just launched their ChatGPT Atlas, an AI-powered browser that blends search, automation, and conversational assistance directly into web navigation. This is kind of a direct challenge, obviously, to Google Chrome. Atlas can summarize pages, compare products, and even act on your behalf, like booking travel or managing carts. Some key takeaways from this article was that search is shifting from links to conversations. Users will start with AI, not the search bar. Browsers will also become platforms, not just portals. So Atlas integrates memory, automation, and personalization. Data governance is obviously critical. Atlas agent mode raises big privacy and compliance questions when this new browser launched. And then last key takeaway here is competition is heating up between Chrome, Opera, and Brave. They're all kind of racing to similar AI features. So it'll be interesting to see how they all develop in the next few months or years. Some questions with this, Eric. How should enterprises govern AI agents that act on behalf of users? And what is just your overall takeaway from chat or OpenAI launching this?
I think it's a huge development, and I think it's a good example or a next step in the whole evolution of AI, the blurring of AI and search engine, the traditional search engine model that Google pioneered. So I would see Google as the one, most threatened by this potentially. I know Google has Perplexity, which is an AI, sort of like a version of what you're talking about with OpenAI, minus the agentic part of it. I don't think it has the AI agent part of it yet. But to your point about the agents, you didn't use the word agentic AI, but that's essentially what they're talking about, is having an AI tool that can not only find information, but take action on that information, making a hotel reservation or a restaurant reservation or car rental or setting an appointment, whatever it is. That's a whole nother step in the whole evolution of search engines turning into AI, more search-based AI. Now we're talking about agentic AI combined with search AI. So I think there's a lot of merit to that, and I think it's pretty cool what they're doing. I'll be curious to see how Google responds, though, because again, Google's the big behemoth, and they have a lot of revenue at stake here with their search engine, paid ads, and all that stuff, with YouTube as well. So I'll be curious to see how that unfolds. But I think it's a pretty cool approach. But I do think, to your other question, we as humans, we still have to train these models of what to do. We can't just assume it's going to figure everything out on day one. We're going to have to take the time and have the patience to train it and to work through the kinks and fine tune what the agents can and can't do for us. And at the end of the day, we still have to take responsibility and accountability for what the AI, what the agent does, even if we don't like what it does. So I think, micromanaging the AI agents to start is appropriate. And then over time, you start to get more comfortable where you can back off a bit and let it do its thing. But I think it would be really interesting to see how how much market share they're able to take away from Google and other AI and search engine providers.
For sure. And with that, what governance framework should organizations adopt as browsers start to store their users' memories and context?
Yeah, this is such an unknown area, and I'm fascinated by it because we're in uncharted territory now, and I feel like when it comes to intellectual property and confidential data, I think it's going to be years, maybe a decade or more, before the court systems throughout the world work through all these issues. Because someone, if they haven't already, someone's going to get sued at some point for. And I think they have. I mean, there have been lawsuits involving intellectual property, especially with news publishers. I forgot. I don't recall the exact parties involved, but I know there's a group of news publishers that sued one of the AI providers for scraping their information and using that to train their model, and sort of undermining the value of what that publication was providing in terms of proprietary content. So I think it's going to be years, maybe a decade or more, before this all gets settled. And it's probably not going to be one answer in one approach worldwide. You're going to have different court systems throughout the world. They're going to come to different conclusions, and that's going to make it even more complex. So I think you just have to be careful, knowing that we're in uncharted territory. We don't know how this is going to unfold. We've gone so far on this show as to have an attorney on the show to talk about intellectual property and AI, what the implications are. And even he says the same thing, which is, we don't know. We don't know how, you basically have to wait for either courts to rule on who's right or wrong, who owns the intellectual property or not, or governments to set the frameworks and the regulations. And neither of those things have happened at scale yet across the world, or at least not consistently. So I think we're quite a ways away from any of us having the real answers, but it's a really good point, because we may not like the answer we get over time. So, and we can't undo what we're doing right now. We can't put the toothpaste back in the bottle and undo all the confidential information we might have shared with an OpenAI model, for example. So I think it's just, corporations and organizations need to, probably err on the side of, you don't want to stifle innovation, but you also don't want to have a complete free for all. So putting at least some loose parameters in place of what employees can or can't do with AI, what information they can or can't share, and which AI models they can or can't use. Because if you're using OpenAI, there's obviously more exposure, more risk there potentially. So I think getting those policies and procedures in place is really important for organizations to look at.
For sure. And kind of a different question here, but could Atlas accelerate or complicate vendor lock-in as the AI ecosystems become more proprietary?
It's a good question. I mean, right now we see AI reducing vendor lock, but it's reducing vendor lock from the legacy incumbent providers, the Microsofts of the world or the SAPs, the Oracles, whoever, the enterprise type providers are. But I think over time, what it does is it just shifts. And if you shift too far to rely too much on AI models, now all of a sudden you've just created vendor lock in a different way. The good thing with AI, I guess it's good news and bad news, is that we don't know who the big incumbents are going to be. We don't know, we don't know how far AI is going to take us organizationally. So we still have time to adjust and to chart a path forward. But the bad news is we don't know, like some of these AI providers won't be around, in 5 years or so. There's a huge bubble brewing in the space. There's a lot of money chasing all these different AI providers. And they just, we learned one thing in Y2K and the tech bubble of the Y2K, right around 2000, 2001, 25 years ago. If there's one lesson we learned, it's that most of these AI providers are not going to make it. And you can assume that, okay, Google, they'll probably make it with whatever AI investments they continue to make. OpenAI with its Microsoft connection will probably make it. Plus, it's got a dominant share right now, but we don't know. And we've seen plenty of instances in history where there's a tech provider that comes out of the gate strong, looks like the dominant player. You look at someone like NVIDIA, for example. Right now they're huge with valuation, but are they going to be in 5 years? I don't know. They could be out of business in 5 years. It's not out of the realm to say that. I'm not saying there's any information suggesting that would happen, other than history potentially repeating itself with all the failed tech e-commerce tech companies in the early 2000s that ultimately failed. Most of them failed and some of them succeeded, like Amazon, and some of the others went on to dominate the market. But others, for every one of those, there were plenty of others that completely failed. So we don't know where the AI landscape's going to go. We don't know what it's going to look like. So you just have to, now would be the time to not get too locked into one vendor, but to look at how you could use these tools in a way that's somewhat interchangeable, to where there's less risk to your organization if you did have to make a switch.
Yeah, that's a great point for sure. And speaking earlier, how you're saying Microsoft, it's obviously this launch of Atlas is going to potentially be a big competitor for Microsoft. We're going to get into something that Microsoft actually announced that they're switching. So in our next newsworthy article today, Microsoft just announced they're ending volume pricing, which means that it's basically this volume discount program for online services, and they're discontinuing that on November 1st, meaning enterprises that relied on bulk pricing should see costs jump by potentially millions. Some key points here: the change affects core Microsoft 365 and Azure subscriptions. Large organizations will now pay per user per service without traditional tiered discounts. It's a part of Microsoft's broader shift towards subscription-based revenue consistency, less negotiation, more standardization. And CIOs and CFOs are warning that this could destabilize long-term IT budgets and trigger widespread vendor renegotiations. So why this matters, this move kind of highlights how vendor lock-in can quickly become a cost trap. It also reinforces the value of maintaining optionality across your tech stack. Eric, with this, obviously vendor lock-in, this is something we were just talking about. What is your initial reaction to this?
Well, I think it's a stark reminder that there's this dark side to cloud. And I think, and I've been saying for years now, and I think we're starting to see maybe some of the early indicators of this unfolding, but I've been saying for a while that there will be a reaction, a negative reaction to vendor lock and cloud lock. And so this is the price companies are going to have to pay for jumping into this cloud movement. And I'm not saying cloud's bad. I'm not even saying it's good or bad. Quite frankly, I don't really care about cloud or on-prem. It doesn't matter to me. It's more about what's the cost benefit, and, is a client getting the right ROI out of it? But I think what we're seeing now is that, you get a big company like Microsoft, or you look at SAP, Oracle, Workday, Salesforce, any of these big enterprise tech providers, they have a lot of leverage. Once they get you into the cloud and you've got all your data there, all your apps there, your switching costs are so exorbitantly high that they know you're not just gonna rip it out and replace it with something new. Or if you do, it's gonna take you years to do that. So it's a calculated risk or gamble that these big vendors are taking, which is, let's push and see how hard we can push. I mean, because why wouldn't they? If they can raise the prices and people are going to pay, then is that their fault? I would say probably not. You can chalk it up to greed or whatever you want, but I mean, that's just human nature, and that's how businesses work. So we as, when I say we, I mean that the CIOs and organizations out there that are investing in technology, they're sort of enabling that behavior, in my opinion, by getting locked into one vendor. And, you look at, I've been very critical of SAP and Microsoft, maybe to a slightly lesser degree. But those two, I think SAP in the enterprise tech space is notorious for locking people in and jacking up prices and limiting options. And so much so that they're under investigation in Europe right now with the EU government for antitrust behavior. But Oracle does the same thing. Microsoft clearly is doing the same thing. The bigger the vendor, the more likely they are to do it, because there's inertia with big companies that have all this investment in one platform. There's inertia. It's just going to take way too much time and to make a switch if they wanted to, and they're too risk averse to want to begin with in many cases. So that's going to continue to happen until organizations realize, like, hey, wait a minute, this cost is getting out of control and I can't justify the spend. Maybe I want to bring stuff in-house again on-prem, or maybe I want to go to a private cloud, or maybe I want to diversify the vendors I work with so I'm not locked into one, or so that one vendor doesn't have this much leverage over my operations. Because if you think about it, what sucks about what Microsoft's doing and what other enterprise tech providers are doing is that they have so much control over your business. It's not just your technology now, it's your business. If you, God forbid, run into financial issues and you've got to start making decisions around, do I make payroll or do I pay my cloud provider? And let's just say you say, I'm not going to pay my cloud provider so I can make payroll. Now all of a sudden the cloud provider they could shut off your access and you've got no business to run because all your apps and data are in that platform, and you can't do anything about it. You don't have a backup of it. In the past, you could have just restored it back up, or put it in a new server and crank the system back up. You can't do that in cloud. It's not even an option. So I think all it's going to take is a couple of organizational failures where it literally is a failure because they forget to make a payment. They can't make a payment. The cloud provider shuts off access, and now suddenly services are shut off for that company and all their customers. Just wait till one big consumer facing company does it, and that's going to get a lot of attention, and eventually people will throttle back. I think they'll throttle back their all-in approach to cloud services as we're in right now.
For sure. Yeah, that would be super interesting. One last question with this. What is the smart way to renegotiate or diversify when Microsoft or any of these providers hold so much market power?
Well, I think the big thing is diversification. Don't make it to where you need them that badly to where you'll just pay whatever they want to charge you. If you can move some of those services to a competing provider, or at least you have that option to do it, that alone is leverage. And I know one thing that's interesting that you said about that article is they say they're doing it to standardize the pricing, which to me mean, and you said it too, they want to minimize the negotiations. Well, what they really want to do is minimize the discounts. They want to maximize the profit, which they're entitled to do that. They're a big publicly traded company. That's what their job is. But when it comes at the expense of you, the customer, you've got to think about, does that make sense for me? So that's the biggest thing, is just making sure that you diversify and that you have options. I would not go all in with anyone at this point, whether it's Microsoft or SAP or whomever. And in fact, when we look at Microsoft and SAP customers on the enterprise tech space, we're seeing a lot of them that are saying, we like the product. We don't want to move away from Microsoft or SAP, but we want to shrink the footprint, which I think makes total sense. If you can shrink the footprint to where, yes, you're leveraging the best of what that vendor provides, but you're not investing in all this other crap that you may not need from them. Focus on what you need from them and then diversify into other areas, especially now with integration tools, platform as a service tools. It's so easy to integrate systems in a way that 20 years ago you couldn't really do, or at least it was too complex 20 years ago. Now it's not. That's not the case. Now you can integrate systems pretty easily. You don't have to worry as much about single source of truth, single system running your entire operations. It's just not as necessary as it was in the past.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, super interesting, newsworthy articles today, but I'm really excited to get into this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. We're going to go down on the floor here at the conference here at Infor Velocity here in Orlando, Florida. They do a series of localized conferences throughout the world, and this is the one they're doing in the U.S. here this week where we're filming. And so I'm going to go talk to some customers and partners, and then stick around because at the end of the series of discussions, I'm going to talk to Kevin Samuelson, who's the CEO of Infor, and I'm also going to talk to Soma, who is the President and Chief Technology Officer. So we'll learn from the very top of a very large software vendor what they see in the market, where they're taking their company and how they're managing the ever-changing world of AI and composable ERP, all of these different trends we're seeing in the marketplace right now. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what they're doing to navigate that. So stick around and we'll be right back. We're here live on the scene at Infor Velocity, and then stick around too, because even after we're done here at the conference, we're going to talk a bit about SAP and what SAP ECC, well, if I could talk, that'd be even better. We're going to talk about what SAP ECC customers can be doing, what some of their options are as they navigate if and when and how to migrate to S4HANA or how to upgrade to S4HANA. So stick around. If you're an SAP customer, you definitely want to hear that. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola. C-O-L.
I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown, Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy, as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 246. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. including people, process, technology, and strategy sides of digital transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com, and the show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting and produced by Major Tom Productions. If you'd like to learn how to collaborate on this podcast and other content that we create, please feel free to reach out to us. I've included contact information below for those that are interested in collaborating with us on this podcast and other content. So we're going to jump behind the scenes here. I'm on the scene here at Infor Velocity, which is an annual conference or a series of annual conferences that Infor hosts throughout the world. And they're here in the United States, where I'm based here this week in Orlando, Florida. And I'm going to jump out to the conference floor and actually talk to some customers and partners to hear their experience and their thoughts on where Infor is headed in the enterprise tech space. And if you're out there evaluating potential tech options, you'll probably want to hear this. You want to hear about what some of these customers and partners have to say. And toward the end of the conversation, too, we'll also talk to the CEO of Infor, as well as the President and Chief Technology Officer. So let's jump down behind the scenes, on the scene at Infor Velocity. Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 246. I'm here on the scene at Infor Velocity and have the privilege here of chatting with Kevin, who is the CEO of Infor, and Soma, who's the President and Chief Technology Officer of Infor. So thanks for being here today, guys.
Awesome to be here. Thanks for spending time with us.
Yeah, I know you guys are super busy at these conferences. You're getting pulled a million different directions with customers, partners, all that stuff. So I really appreciate you sitting down with me to talk about some of these exciting announcements you guys have made. There's so much here that you guys have unpacked in the last couple of days with Infor Cloud Platform, with Velocity, with the traditional ERP apps that you're rolling out. Agentic AI obviously is a big thing for you guys. Where do you start with what you're most excited about? If you had to pick the one thing that you just feel like, hey, this is who we are becoming, and this is the direction we're going, how would you summarize it for us?
I think the most differentiated thing that we're doing is the way we've approached agentic AI. And there's news articles and everyone's experienced the both excitement of what's possible with agentic, but also the disappointment, how that actually, to make that actually turn into value. And I think, as you know, our heritage is all about industry specificity and understanding in detail the processes and value drivers within industries. And we've taken that same thinking into how we've approached AI. And so the breadth of offerings that all have specific use cases directly tied to value and outcomes, to be able to package that and deliver it quickly, we think it's a very, very unique approach to AI and something that will really differentiate the market because it will truly deliver value to customers.
Right. Absolutely. And Soma, you've been here a couple of years now, right? At Infor, you've been here a while, right? Which
3 years.
which employee are you again? Employee number
one.
Employee number one of Infor. So you've been here a long time, and you've seen a lot of evolution, a lot of acquisitions, growth, consolidation of systems, decommissioning systems, all the life cycle stuff. I mean, first of all, I'm interested to know how do you stay fresh and current? I mean, you working for the same company, but yet leading the vision for how you're going to become in the future.
Yeah, it's I don't know what to say, but it just mostly more listening, and keeping your eyes and ears open every day or every week. You wake up that what we are doing may be completely obsolete. What do we do next to continue to stay relevant? So having that curiosity and I can say that for Kevin as well. Like curiosity is what drives more learning, and more learning brings more ideas, and that's how we stay current.
Right. And what are you most excited about now as you look to Infor 2025 versus in the late 90s when you started? What are you most excited about with what Infor is doing right now?
Well, the culmination of it, the agentic AI that like Kevin talked about, that's the most exciting stuff at the moment. But if you think about how we got there, right, that's actually an exciting journey. Like, could you look back into the last 10, 12 years of our cloud journey, the way we thought about bringing cloud suites versus ERP to the cloud, which in a sense had to be componentized, and we had to bring these components together, which led us to build what we call the industry cloud platform with the APIs and data-driven architecture with processes built into the system. And that progression led to automation, process automation and so on. That then led us to this agentic AI. So we feel that building this in a foundationally solid fashion that allows us to take advantage of new technologies, but also take advantage of the fact that our root is coming from industry specificity. So ultimately, if you're helping a human agent the digital agent needs to have the same level of knowledge that the human agent has to do that function.
Right, right. Now, you mentioned velocity. First of all, for those that may not be familiar with it, how would you summarize it, in that 30-second summary of how would you explain velocity to the layman?
Yeah, in simple terms, what we wanted to do was make it as easy as possible to take advantage of all of our more advanced offerings, from process mining to robotic process automation to core generative AI, all the way through to agentic. And so what we've done is, rather than try to sell that piecemeal or allow customers to have access to things on a a la carte basis, we said, let's wrap this all together so that when customers would like to dive into advanced technologies, they can get exactly what they want, use it as much as they want in a very simple way. And so that's the idea. So let's put this all together and make it easy.
Yeah. Now, I think an important differentiator that is unique to you guys that I don't see many other vendors doing is velocity is somewhat of a platform that isn't necessarily limited to Infor apps, right? You can use your legacy apps, or if you have a composable ERP or a best of breed solution, you could use velocity as the kind of the core of that. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. Yep.
And is this get into the? I think I know the answer to this, but just hearing it from you guys, just to make sure I'm not assuming, but it sounds like you guys are really embracing not only the industry specificity I can never say that word, the industry specific solutions that you guys create, but also you're not trying to be one size fits all. One system provides the answer to everyone, right? You've sort of embraced this. We've got different solutions for different industries, different apps. We're not trying to force fit everything into one flagship solution. Is that
is
fair?
correct.
Absolutely core to our strategy. I mean, to really be industry specific, a lot of companies say they are, but to truly deliver on that, it means going down to the detailed process level. And so there are constraints to doing that, certainly in one product across many, many different industries. I mean, we talk often about, think of just simple invoicing. Think of a hospital where you're dealing with Medicare or insurance and doctors who are consultants, and the process even to put together an invoice is radically different than in a tier one automotive parts supplier where you're using EDI and RFID. And so that detailed difference is where we really stand out. But that means that we can only focus on a few industries, and even within those, we build products that are specific for those processes and end use cases. And so it's a different approach.
Right.
We think it's a big advantage to have that level of knowledge and capability in the products themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used this analogy before. Swiss Army knife has a place, right? It does a lot of different things. But when you really need a heavy duty tool, you need one of those. Like ours is much more deep. So, and I think as the agentic AI becomes more and more used in the enterprise around the world, it's going to become even more important that the knowledge base of what that agent has in its brain to make decisions to help this human has to have that level of knowledge. I mean, how do you do it if you have a horizontal piece of software that does support a bank as well as a healthcare organization and a soup company all in one platform? Is very, very difficult. It may not be impossible, but it's very difficult to do.
Especially in the cloud.
Yeah.
You can't do as much customization as you might have in the past with your on-prem systems. And I also feel like, one observation I've had about you guys is, if we were having this conversation 10 or 20 years ago, I might have thought, okay, it's an interesting strategy, but it creates some complexity potentially to have to tie together multiple systems. But now, not only with the platform you've provided, just in general, the IT world has changed so much to where composable ERP, best of breed, integration isn't such a bad word. It's not a bad idea. So it almost seems like you guys were ahead a little, maybe too far ahead 10 or 20 years ago, and now the industry is sort of catching up to where you guys have always been. I feel like that's a potential strength for people that in the industries you play.
Yeah, I mean, loosely coupled architecture is something that we, from the get-go, followed, right? Would we have predicted where we'll be in 2025? Perhaps not. But the loosely coupled architecture with openness to connect to whatever system the customer has. It's not about our CloudSuite, it's about their ecosystem. And plugging into their ecosystem, by definition, means that it has to be composable, right? They don't have only Infor. They have other things that are running in their system. So we need to be able to plug it into that ecosystem. Hence, this architecture actually made sense from the get-go. And so we built it and we continue to do that. And now with composable ERP and microservices architecture, pulling things together becomes easier because that's how we built it in the first place.
Yeah. Now, one question we get a lot from clients that are evaluating Infor and other ERP systems is, on the agentic AI side of things. Do you have any really cool examples or use cases of how you've seen a customer or how a customer is planning to use agentic AI, just because it is relatively new and a lot of people are asking, well, sounds cool, there's a million ways I could use it, but give me some meat, some examples of how customers are using it. What have you guys seen?
Well, good news is, while we just announced these capabilities this week, they're not new to us. We've been in the field deploying them. We've got 100 customers that have already begun the journey with us and 40 that are live. And all of those, we can point to the specific value that's been created. So we can give you lots of different examples. One that I mentioned the other day, one of my favorites, is for a forklift manufacturer. The job of customer support is really complicated. Each forklift is put together differently. You have low-paid people that are trying to take customer requests and repair needs and find the right part in the right VIN number, find a substitute if it's not there, figure out how to get it to the customer. That's rife with mistakes. And so by using a combination of our agentic AI, some of the AWS capabilities that allow us to use AI to better scan incoming messages, that now can be completely automated, where the customer request can come in, it can be automatically determined how is that forklift put together, is the part available, if not, what's the substitute, pull all that together and get it to that end customer quickly. That's resulted in 30% improvement in first-time fixes, and even more than that, we're able to build the capability to recommend cross-sell and upsell. So it's also created 30% more cross-sell upsell, because all that data that we have and all that industry capability has lots of different outcomes. So it's those kind of outcomes that are very material margin enhancement and revenue growth that we purpose build our products for. So there's lots and lots of great stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps just to drive this industry specificity, what Kevin just described in custom forklift manufacturer's environment, contrast that with working with the company in Switzerland. They're in grocery business. They're dealing with farmers. That invoices that come from those farmers, right? There's going to be variation in terms of, because this is just nature produced, and not all tomatoes are going to be exactly the same. So when you get an invoice, the chances of it exactly matching what you thought you got is actually not going to be 100%. There's a lot of variation. And when that variation happens, should you approve, should you not approve, building that intelligence into the system, the agent is able to understand the exception and understand who the supplier is, what the pattern is from this supplier, and ability to approve or not approve is the kind of use case that we can build in a solution. But this solution I just described specifically addresses food and beverage requirements. Whereas the one that Kevin described specifically addresses industrial manufacturing. And that's why we believe that we can deliver better value and leapfrog the competition much, much faster.
Right. Where do you see guys going here in the future, not just from a product perspective, but more just strategically as a company, especially with Coke Partners being a big investor in the company still, all your advancements in AI, the Infor Cloud platform, all that stuff. Where are you taking the company in the future? What can we expect?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be more the same. We want to continue to be extremely open to data from other systems and integrations. We want to continue to be laser focused on the few industries that we're in, building capability, and then in our industry cloud platform, just building use cases and specificity through agentic AI that solves problems versus tools that customers have to figure out. So we feel like the more we focus on those things, there's just a compounding power of growing offerings, growing capabilities, and the more we do that, the better.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I appreciate you guys being here today. Really appreciate you taking the time out, and great job on the conference too. We've got a lot of excited customers here, excited employee base and partners. So thanks for having us, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for coming and spending a few days with us, and great to spend some time today. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Kevin and Soma from Infor, appreciate them being here today. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll continue with this episode of Transformation Ground Control.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors?
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we publish. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
I'm going to walk around here at the conference. Very informal. It's very shaky. Got some shaky camera footage here because I'm holding the camera. But we'll get the content down here. But I'm here. I'm going to walk around and talk to some people. And I've got some people lined up to talk to you just to figure out what's going on here in the ecosystem of Infor, what's new, what's exciting, all that good stuff. So joining me are two people that I know well from PCG. So to start, tell me a bit about yourself, Dan, and then we'll ask you more about PCG in general, but tell me about your background. You have quite the illustrious history here in the Infor world.
Yeah, so I started off with a company. Started off with a company called Bond Company in the 90s, which was one of the original ERP pioneers. Was with them for about 3 years, and then built my own consulting firm, doing Infor LN, which is a predecessor of what is the Infor CloudSuite now. So I actually get to be a director of marketing now, which is wonderful.
And the ERP doctor.
And the ERP doctor, that's correct. Yes.
You're a content machine. You're putting out lots of stuff, podcasts, videos, LinkedIn posts. So be sure to follow Dan Fulbridge if you don't already. He's got some great stuff there.
Thanks.
Hey, bet.
Yeah, Eric, thank you very much. My name is David Ploy, like Dan. I'm an old Bond guy, started back in 96 on Triton 2.2. So we're all embedded a lifetime inside of this product suite, which is now LN. So as PCG, we have well over 20 years of experience across multiple industries, aerospace and defense, automotive, so on and so forth. And we're just delighted to be here and share the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining me here on camera. I guess my first question for you is if we back up a second, you guys have both seen a lot in the Infor space. I'm going to ask you about PCG in particular here in a minute, the product suite, overall direction of Infor. But in the meantime, tell us a little bit about what you've seen. What are the biggest things you've seen change in the world of Infor? Because you guys have been here forever, or been involved in the ecosystem forever.
Yes, forever. We've been here forever.
You're not that old, but you know. But going back to the Bond days, you go way back to the days of Bond, and you know Jan Bond, and you kind of the legacy Infor guys. So tell us what are the biggest changes you've seen in the last couple decades?
The biggest change is probably the cloud suites for sure. Have everything on the cloud now. Infor is almost 100% cloud now, so we don't do on-prem anymore, and that gives us a lot of license with things like agentic AI and the Velocity suites and all these things that are coming. So it's very exciting right now.
Totally different than when you started in the late 90s?
Yeah.
2000s?
Yeah. We're going through screens and putting in purchase orders and things like that.
Numbers.
Yeah, transaction numbers. Yep. All of that stuff.
How about you, David? What have you seen change, or what are the most exciting changes you've seen in the last couple of days?
Some of the most exciting changes, I think, is just Infor's openness in the partner community, how they enable their partners, providing us with all the tools that is necessary to make the customer successful, continuous innovation, as we've seen with the agents that they're launching this week. How they've worked with us to integrate our intellectual property, a smart factory that is a full manufacturing execution system that we've fully integrated in for LN right now. It's just been a fantastic journey. Open partner support from the development team to the partner teams to the sales orgs.
Right. Now, a lot of people watching right now may know Infor, they may know Sightline or M3 or CloudSuite, Bond, Lawson, one of the many solutions that
legacy solutions.
Yeah, legacy solutions. But you guys, tell us a little bit about, you started to answer this a bit. Tell us a little bit about Smart Factory and how does that factor into the overall strategy the Infor has? It's a little bit different than other vendors that are trying to be the one size fits all answer for everyone. Tell us a little bit about Smart Factory.
Sure, you're right.
And then tell us how.
So we've identified a gap, so to speak, in the market for a cloud-based MES solution born in the cloud. And we've integrated that fully with LN. So Infor itself has got a great MES product that's on-prem today, and we've got Smart Factory that is in the cloud, but fully integrated to LN. So Infor customers have the choice of best of both worlds.
Right. Yeah. And it's how does this tie into what we're hearing here at the event with Infor Velocity and Infor OS and some of the more, I call it the composable ERP. I know you talk a lot about this too, Dan, but how does your strategy with PCG, Smart Factory, the product you've developed, how does that tie into Infor's strategy?
So great question. It's completely tied in with the OS, using the data streams, Industry 5.0, human in the loop. And as you talk about composable ERP and using microservices to extend that, our MES solution is also a composable MES solution. So we can take a customer's on the crawl, walk, run journey. So instead of taking a whole monolithic MES solution, and people have real difficulty with integrating from day one, we can take the customer on that journey of crawl, walk, run to solve a critical pain point, get the win, solve another critical pain point, get the win. And as I said, the beauty of it is through working with Infor, it is 100% integrated to the Infor LN platform today.
That's great. Now, Dan, when you think of this as a marketing guy here at the event at Infor Velocity, what's the most exciting thing that you've heard so far? If there's one thing that jumps out. I know that these events are always overwhelming. There's so much stuff they're announcing and new things on the roadmap. Some of it's here, some of it's in the works. But what's the one thing that just stood out as like, hey, the Infor's got this?
It's probably the ability to have a very fast upgrade from a lot of the different legacy platforms. So that's could be, in our case, we have 2 ERPs. Basically no other firms have that. So we have CSI, which is used to be called Sightline, and we also have Industrial Enterprise, which used to be called LN. And so we're able to do it on both. And then we have our own IP. So that's very exciting. And then all the tools that come with the Velocity suite, I think, is also very exciting. So the process mining, process catalogs we've been using for a few years, but the mining tools have come along a lot. And the RPA has been enhanced with the agentic AI. So I think that's very exciting as a rule. And, the fact that we have IP that nobody else has.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this MES solution is a cloud-based solution, like the vet said. And Infor MES, very good product, which we offer.
Yeah.
But it's only on-prem at the moment. So we've got that whole solution set. And if we were offering just CSI, for example, then we can only service the SMBs, right? So we can do SMB and enterprise now, and we can, advise you on the choice, like you guys do, right?
Yeah.
Advise you on the best fit, and make a choice for the customer.
Yeah. So for those that may not be familiar with Infor Velocity, could you summarize for the audience here, people who maybe you're just exploring Infor, maybe they're not as familiar with the tool set? Because I think more people, in my opinion, in experience, more people have heard of Sightline, M3, CloudSuite. But I think Infor Velocity is relatively new, right? It just doesn't have the same name recognition.
Maybe a couple years.
How would you describe it if you were to summarize what it is?
One word: access. And this is what Infor is just brilliant at. All Infor's senior executive leadership team is here, from business to marketing to sales to the product team. So customers have access to Infor's executives to give them direct feedback. As partners, we get to meet with our customers and Infor's executive to solution on the fly, whether it's a pain point or where it's going to land on the roadmap or potentially accelerate certain things. So I just cannot commend them more than we are by providing that access to customers and partners at events like Velocity. We have this one. We just had the one in Amsterdam, and they had the same access to the executive team there. So these guys travel the world and care about their customers.
Yeah, I like the idea that they're going to the customers. Rather
Exactly.
than one big, massive
Yep.
global event. They're going all over the world.
For sure.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the industry focus that Infor has. So makes our job a lot easier if we can go into aerospace and defense, we can go into automotive, we can go into all these different manufacturing type verticals, micro verticals they call them, and have business models that are already set up for that business process mapping, and then the mining that goes on top of that. So you can figure out what processes are being used in the old software, and then how that maps to the new.
So it's really, tying together the systems, even if it's not an invoice. Right? If I've got
Yeah,
like a CPQ system or CRM or something like that, and I want to tie it to the Infor suite, and do that through Velocity.
That's actually one of the big advantages of it, and that's what the executives have been talking about. Is that it ties into other systems. So they talk about SAP. You can tie into that if you want. And then the ERPs can work, and then you can put things in the data lake also, data lake and data fabric, in order to take from different sources, including other ERPs, brands, vendors.
That's huge. And in fact, I want to ask you something, because I know you work on the NetSuite side as well, and I know this is an Infor conference. We're here to talk mainly about Infor today, but I do want to ask you about NetSuite and enterprise to PCG. So one thing that I find fascinating about Smart Factory and what you guys are doing in PCG is that you built the Smart Factory for NetSuite.
Originally, yes.
Originally, yeah. And NetSuite to me has always been the product that I would have thought would have been the least likely to open up to outside integration, open up its platform, and it's really embraced that model, and you guys are good. Demonstration of that. Do you think that's where the market's headed in general, outside of NetSuite and Infor? Do you think more companies are going to open up their platforms to third-party developers like you guys to create?
Well, I think if they want to survive, the answer is yes. Look, the buyers from the industry has completely changed. People are focused on collaboration and acceleration, and you're not going to do that by trying to hide yourself in a box. So we are expanding the integration to CSI and to M3 in the not too distant future. But yeah, my belief is if an ERP system or an OEM chooses to remain in a box, they're writing their own future.
Right.
Yeah.
It's meant to be an agnostic.
Yeah.
Cool. Definitely meant to be agnostic for ERPs.
Right. Good. Well, what else do you guys? What else would you share with the audience? Those that couldn't make it to this Velocity or any of the other Velocity events, what advice would you give to people watching that are thinking about Infor, or even if they're not sure if they want to consider it? They're just looking at their enterprise tech initiative, trying to figure out what to do next. I mean, what's the one piece of advice you give?
Well, I would say plan ahead. Again, the access to knowledge is in a couple of days. Come back with leadership. Come back with ideas. Come back with very, very key knowledge sharing presentations. It's going to take you months and months and months to gain that knowledge. So focus, pick your event that works for you, and come learn, come network. I know that is L and N, but but that's what it's all about.
Yeah. How about you, Dan? You do a lot of thought leadership around this topic. What advice would you give to someone who's just getting ready to get started?
Yeah, I think it would be to get your data clean. Use AI tools to clean your data sets. Feed good, strong data into your new system, so you get prepared for that. Do workshops to go through the business processes and everything, and map and mine those. And then you're pretty much ready to run when you get into it.
Yeah.
And not to launch in without doing the change management and doing all those other things that are so important to the success of a project, because as it's coming, all the users are pretty scared probably of AI and what's coming. So that becomes even more important to the change management.
Yeah. Well, today, just this morning, I think it was, they announced 10% of Amazon's white collar workforce is being laid off.
Salespeople
and people
like
see those
that.
Headlines and they think, oh crap, I don't want AI in my organization because that's going to affect me. So I think change management becomes even more important, even though that AI has so much power and potential. It is a threat.
I think to that point, when you listen, when Soma spoke in Amsterdam as well as here, and we fully subscribe to this, right? Is AI has really augmented intelligence, where from an Industry 5.0 perspective for true digital transformation, we have to keep that human in the loop, right?
Yeah.
So automate everything that is routine, and repurpose the workforce to grow the company.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would say is call PCG because we can help you with that.
Yeah, exactly. And how do we learn more about PCG for those that aren't familiar with you? What's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
So the website is pcgservices.com. And we have another website for Smart Factory called asmartfactory.com, all one word. And I have developed something called the PCG Insights Hub. So if you get to the main website there, the first menu, you drop it down and it says PCG Insights Hub. Got about 250 videos already, 20 pages. So it's really coming along really fast.
And that's agnostic, right?
That's it has more of the stuff that we do, right? It has NetSuite and it has Sightline and it has, CloudSuite LN. But
I found it helpful just in general. Like,
it is in general. I mean, like take you enter a journal entry, for instance, right? I mean, how different is that in SAP as in Infor? It doesn't really matter. And I have explanations of each of those videos underneath. I've got webinars there. I've got the shorts from the webinars that I've been doing, the solutions review one. So a lot of that thought leadership type of material is going to be there as well.
Pretty cool. I appreciate your guys' time. Thanks for being here.
Sure. Thank you.
Darian, Devitt, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Be sure to follow PCG Solutions and follow these guys on LinkedIn. And I'm going to walk around and find your colleagues here and keep the conversation going. So, Casey, yeah,
good. Thanks, Frank.
What's the number one thing you're most excited about? I told you I wasn't going to interview, but here we are.
Here we are. Our agentic AI and how we're rolling out for our customers. I think it's very exciting. It's very descriptive. It's actually solving business challenges, not just wide open. Here's technology for technology's sake. Thank you. And it's going to be a lot of deep functionality that we're rolling out. So our customers are excited. The amount of phones I saw up taking pictures of slides during presentations just shows how excited they are. And they're going to be critical to providing that feedback loop to us and to our AI agents to make them better and see how we can really benefit our customers out there.
Yeah. A lot of talk about Infor Velocity and OS too. I think that's a unique differentiator for you guys, something that not many vendors do.
It is. It's a platform built on AWS. It's deeply integrated all the way down. And it's with our data lake, our analytics, and our AI built on top of that. It's kind of a ready-made platform that we can install for our existing customers, new customers, to integrate a lot of disparate systems that are, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud already. Very strong integration capabilities, data governance, security, on and on. So it allows customers that aren't necessarily ready for ERP upgrades or WMS upgrades, what have you, to still modernize and get off of their antiquated systems and then have a platform to scale and grow.
So this is actually a really good event. There's probably about 500 people here, and I think they said there's 300 or so customers here, and then a bunch of people from Infor as well. So they try to keep these fairly small or relatively small compared to the really big, massive ERP conferences that most vendors will do. So it's kind of cool that they're localizing a lot of this content too. And hopefully we get to one of the ones outside the U.S. as well for our international teams as well. So we've just got a couple people. It's like herding cats here, trying to get people all in the same place, as you can imagine.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, Alex. Who are you? What do you do here?
Sure. So I'm the Vice President for Transformation at Infor. I've been in the ecosystem about 8 years or so. Before that, a couple of years running operations for an aerospace and defense manufacturer. Okay. And about 15 years before that, national security.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been fantastic. So I kind of sprinkle across a few areas. So sales support, product development in terms of approach and timeline for the industries, supporting the product development team, and as well as supporting the strategy team.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So what are you learning so far? What's the biggest piece of information or takeaway you've had? I know we're not through the conference, so we've got a lot more to cover, but what are you most excited about right now?
So, I mean, the AI agents that were debuted, Kevin and Soma came out and kind of showed us, was absolutely fantastic. So seeing the evolution of that, AI is seen as a catchphrase in a lot of places. Like, what does it actually mean? Is there something tangible? It's every company's, we're doing AI. What does that actually mean? We've finally laid out the agents across the system, which is absolutely fantastic. And that continued investment is now becoming real. And we're seeing that across the board, which is great. So for me, that was a really big show, big takeaway.
Right.
Good. And for me, it was also great to be able to meet. So we've had a couple of customers here. I grew up largely in the aerospace and defense side, but also in manufacturing, but with time in industrial and high-tech electronics and a few others. But One of the reasons I came to Infor is in Iraq in 2008. I had it's an Army Special Operations team on the ground, psychological operations, and we had a platoon from SEAL Team 3 was there. It was Chris Kyle, so it's in the movie American Sniper. And remember, it was pretty wild. So I remember at one point our driver identified what ended up being about a 25-pound bag of homemade explosives, roadside bomb, remote detonator on top, and he said, "Look, we got to get our vehicle with the the jammer in the bubble so that we can protect the guys on the ground from this explosive device." So for about a couple hours, I'm looking out my window at this bag of explosives, and you can get readings on the jammer that basically the bad guys are trying to set it off to hurt us. And we made it through that that situation. It was able to be diffused and taken away. That vehicle, the boards and the jammers, the radios, they're all built on Infor software, all of it. So the only reason I'm standing here is to be able to. So I get to meet a couple of customers that built some of that equipment, and some of the more senior members of the company here that I hadn't had a chance to meet who were around during that time contributed to me being here. So for me, it was really a special personal experience as well, in addition to all the technical things.
That's super cool. I had not heard that story before. Yeah. So. And it's funny because there's something comforting about knowing that the same technology that did that could potentially run our business. And
it's amazing.
And maybe the stakes are a little lower than that. The stakes are there, but they're for all of us, they are pretty.
I mean, so if you want to talk about quality control, I literally had to put my life on the line with it, and it worked out in the end. So the software is always continuing to improve. I'm always amazed at the enhancements that are being made, and it's a reflection of what comes in from the customer base, right? In terms of where's the industry going? Do we have that forward look? We're making the investments, and from what I've seen since I've been here, there is a strategic roadmap. There's a desire to invest, and there's a desire to ensure that we're keeping up with the latest and greatest. And that's how we're continuing to grow. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
It's been good.
Yeah. What do you think of the strategy that Infor is pursuing? And this is something I always ask people in the Infor community. Is the composable ERP lack of one-size-fits-all solution that Infor is intentionally pursued?
Sure.
How do you, because you look at Infor and then you compare it to like Microsoft, or I'm sorry, Oracle or SAP, for example, Workday.
Sure.
They're primarily I've got one solution.
Yep.
NetSuite's the same way too. You've got one solution, it's
sure.
fast, and it either works for you or it doesn't. Whereas Infor, it's not quite that simple. It's not that quite simple. There's multiple solutions. You've got Velocity, you've got all these other tools.
Sure.
How do you think the industry is headed that way, or what do you think, or is this just a unique value proposition for you?
So for a long time, there was a mindset amongst the customer base and the community. Well, if everything's fully natively integrated, integration is a big problem. We don't want to deal with the disparate software. And so Infor has built that in CloudSuites, but with a recognition that if you do that, it can't be completely one size fits all. So while they've successfully integrated and produced CloudSuites out there with all the bells and whistles you would need in one system, they haven't built it in a sense that it's probably just the best way to put it. Could a car factory probably be converted to build tanks, or could a warehouse somewhere be converted to do distribution? Yes, but that's not primarily what they do. So the software system that's made for one isn't across the board the same. It needs to be specific to those areas of the business that are different, that's germane to that business and that particular industry. And so Infor made the decision, rightfully so, that between that and micro verticals underneath, we need to ensure that there's functionality and software that is unique and capable of handling those. At the same time, make sure that there's a baseline system where there's commonality for all of our users across the board. And so it's been, I think, a delicate balancing act that they've successfully managed for the last decades coming up to this point right now. So we've got great CloudSuite products that are industry specific. So it'll give you all the base that you need, plus the industry specific functionality. So you don't have to go out and buy a bunch of bolt-ons, and it gives you everything in one spot. So that's really, really kind of unique. And I think it's been a really successful strategy.
Right. By yourself. Not everyone knows you. Everyone should know you, but they don't necessarily know you.
Well, I'm Steve Levy, and I'm honored to be here with Eric Kimberling. Just a legend in the software implementation business. What we do is really hard for our customers. Even sophisticated customers like Boeing and Kodak, for example, they really need help to take advantage and to really start to use the technology that we build. So as an industry, it's great that we build good technology and do all these automations with AI. It's really cool. But if nobody could use them, it'd be useless. So you turn our technology into usable technology. And for that, we thank you, man.
Oh, thank you. That's the real reason I wanted you on this podcast here today, so you could...
Just for that plug?
Just so we could get a plug from you.
I'd give you a hug. We'll cut it out after.
Oh, there we go.
Are we live?
Oh, we're live, yeah.
Oh, then we won't cut that out.
Dozens of people just saw this.
Amazing. Dozens of people. Threes of people are fixated by our conversation.
Yes. So tell us about, you've been doing this a while, at Infor especially. Tell us about the evolution of Infor. What are you excited about? What pivots do you see happening right now that we're learning about here today? What are you most excited about?
Well, the industry AI agents are really exciting. The ability for the computer to actually be an assistant and to help you get stuff done faster instead of to just be a repository of the stuff that we as users put into it is really exciting to me. And I think it'll be really exciting to our users. But as we mentioned, they have to adopt it first. Once they adopt it and start using it, and there's a real concern there. I mean, I do think that a lot of users are afraid of obsolescence. They're afraid that these agents will be automated and replace their usefulness. They will not. They will simply make you more efficient and able to get so much more done with the same staff you have today. So that's what excites me the most.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what do you think about? I've asked a few people this question now. Curious to get your take. This whole trend towards composable ERP. In other words, not one size fits all. And some, there's merit in both arguments here, both sides of the equation. You've got call it the SAP and NetSuite approach, where we've got our flagship solution, and that's the one you're going to get. And if you're not on that one, you're not going to get all the innovation, all that stuff. And then there's the other extreme, which is total best of breed, where I just go out and find a bunch of different technologies that happen to work together. And then Infor is sort of in the middle, maybe leaning more towards that latter direction. How do you see Infor fitting in when it comes to the whole composable ERP versus single unified integrated ERP debate? It will probably never get resolved, by the way.
It will not. So my perspective is probably different than the other people at Infor because, as you know, I'm crazy. I think that's the real differentiator.
That's why I wanted to be on this.
Exactly. Glad to be here. I believe that the entire conversation about composable ERP is because nobody wants to change ERPs. It's so much easier to plug in a general ledger or a CRM or a capability than it is to have open heart surgery and really replace your core. And I think it's a valid argument. I've long advocated for features and capabilities to be composed on the edges, but you do need a strong, solid core. And a lot of us are running with a core that was built over 35 years of customizations and mods. There's security risks, and they're not designed for the cloud. So I do think the conversation is really valid. I think it's dangerous for those that are on premise to look at a purely composable solution without making sure that their existing architecture is secure.
Yeah.
Because the future is going to have some cybersecurity risks in it. I think that on-premise software is marking time towards security risks. Our users, while resistant to adopt technology, are very, very likely to click on links generated by AI to incentivize them to click. Please click here. Somebody needs your help. Your company needs this. The impersonalizations, like it's getting really easy to start to phish people and get them to click. And that makes the on-premise systems highly more vulnerable than they ever were before.
Yeah. Now, I know you're involved quite a bit on the business development side too. So you're seeing customers before they're customers in many cases, and you're working with the sales teams that do that as well. Are you guys intentionally trying to pick up any of the legacy ERP customers, like for example, SAP, Microsoft, or someone's implementing NetSuite, but that's just for financials. They need a distribution solution or a manufacturing solution or whatever to sit on top of that. Are you guys going after that market with the Velocity toolset, or are you still trying to stick to we're primarily an ERP company that happens to do the AI and integration platform type stuff?
Working with both the sales team and the customer success team, we're so busy. I don't know that we're actually going after people per se. We're not out there pursuing opportunities actively. They're just falling towards us.
Right.
So we are finding a lot of the competitor systems are coming our way. We have an amazing warehouse management system. So specifically, a lot of the SAP users are coming to us for WMS these days. I don't know that it's actually us pursuing them or them just coming to us because the products are so good that they're really getting a life of their own.
Yeah.
We've long been the innovator's choice. Now we seem to be getting some mainstream adoption. It's probably my fault. Let's say that I have been pursuing this and I'm rounding that corner for us, but I don't know that it's true. I think that just good quality and meritocracy, when you create good products that create value for your customers, they talk about it. They brag to their friends, and then their friends call us up.
Yeah. Well, I see too, Infor seems to fit really well, at least with our client base. And we're not affiliated with Infor, as many people watching know. We're not affiliated with Infor or anywhere else. But when we do see Infor fit well, it's usually the types of organizations that are complex, diverse, global. They need a certain amount of flexibility. They want that single integration, or they want that, I don't want to say single integration, but they want that integrated solution, single source of truth, solid analytics, all that stuff. But they also want the flexibility operationally. And it seems like that's where you guys really thrive and compete well.
It's counterintuitive that we're both really good at enforcing a target operating model and being flexible enough to know when to deviate. But oddly, that is the market segment that we're satisfying, is we're finding that large companies today have areas of their business that are highly regulated and need full compliance.
Yeah.
They also have boutique holdings in their operating companies that kind of need flexibility, and their go-to-market has been being the easy person to do business with in their region. And I feel that we're the only software company that really serves both sides of those market segments. And maybe that's why the middle's coming our way these days, because we have both extremes already handled.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. What else? What else should people know as they're thinking about Infor or any other ERP solution for that matter? What's the one piece of advice you'd leave the audience with here?
The one piece of advice I would leave is that as a distributor or manufacturer, or whatever your chosen business is, you don't really pick ERPs professionally. Guys like me will sing the praises of Infor. Guys like me at SAP will sing the praises of SAP. What I find distributors and business people tend to do is they just pick the company that they identify with most. That's not a great technological investment. Spend the investment to get an objective person like Eric or one of his competitors to really do the research for you, to keep people like me and my peers honest. We are honest and we have integrity, but we also accentuate the positive, and Eric makes sure to cut through that bull poop. Is that what we call it when we're live?
It's a technical term. But
technical term.
All right, so Steve Levy from Infor, he's the head of distribution there. And we're actually going to do a part 2 of this. Most likely, I'm hoping that we do this live this evening. There's a networking event where we'll get a chance to talk to more people in addition to who we've already spoken with. But just a couple of things I wanted to point out while we're here talking about it is we are about to release our top 10 enterprise technologies for 2026, and this isn't just ERP systems. This is enterprise technology in general. And in that list, it starts to blur the lines, which we've already been doing for the last couple of years when we do these top 10 rankings, these independent agnostic rankings. We've already been sort of blurring the lines between ERP, BI, CRM, platforms, AI, all that stuff. And what we're finding now is that instead of categorizing everything into a neat box, why not do a top 10 ranking of top enterprise systems? And Infor CloudSuite, when combined with Velocity, is in that top 10 list. So keep an eye out for that on my YouTube channel. Traditional ERP providers like Infor in that list. You'll see SAP, NetSuite, but you'll also see some non-ERP providers like Palantir, Snowflake, etc. So be sure to check that out.
All right, so that was our discussions down on the floor here at Infor Velocity in Orlando, Florida. Some great discussions with partners, executives, customers. Curious to hear your feedback on where you think Infor is headed. So drop in that chat if you're part of the Infor community or if you're evaluating Infor or an Infor customer. I'd love to hear your feedback on where you think Infor is headed, what you think of the product suite, their overall strategy. Drop it in the comment. We'd love to see what you think. And now that we've talked to some of the people here at the conference. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a bit about not only a debrief on what we heard here today at the conference, but also we're going to talk about SAP and ECC customers in particular. What should they be doing and what are the options they have as they consider their potential upgrade to S/4HANA? We're going to get to all that here in just a moment, but first we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed.
I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America, as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation. And you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my sun.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 246. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Town Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. So thanks for being here today. So Darian, I just finished up out on the conference floor here at Infor Velocity. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways, questions from the conversation so far?
Yeah, such a great conversation. Love being live on site. I feel like that was super great. Couple of follow-up questions just for you, Eric, on this. How do you see Infor fitting into this tech space overall?
Well, I think they have a pretty interesting strategy. I think they've been for years now, they've been shying away from the one-size-fits-all approach. That hasn't really ever been their strategy, even when it was at times a weakness for them. So if you go back in time and go back in history and how Infor got to where they are today, they got to where they are largely by acquiring other vendors. They've developed their own products, but they've also acquired products like Bond and others, Lawson, for example. So they've always had this sort of best of breed mentality, but they've also tried to take the best of these different solutions that they've acquired, and they've sort of tried to move toward this CloudSuite single platform solution. But I think they've shied away from going all in on one platform. I mean, you still have customers that are using M3. You have customers that are certainly using bits and pieces of CloudSuite. Now they've got this Infor Velocity platform that allows you to tie together third-party systems. So they're acknowledging and embracing the fact that composable ERP is an important option for a lot of people in the space, especially when you look at their core audiences or their core customers, people that are complex manufacturers. Manufacturers have really complex operations. That a lot of times are multinational, different business units. They've grown through acquisition, private equity owned, and so you've got these complexities and this diversity in their client base to where one single one-size-fits-all answer doesn't necessarily make sense for them. So I think Infor is really embracing that. I think on one hand, they would love to have one platform that everyone just wants, but I think they're also recognizing that they need to offer different solutions. And by having something like Infor Velocity, which is the platform, the integration platform, I think that's pretty smart, because what that's doing is saying, they're sort of moving the center of gravity from ERP now to what the platform is. And you certainly still have the risk with vendor lock. We talked about that earlier in this episode about the whole risk of vendor lock. Now you're just shifting the vendor lock potentially being your ERP provider to now your platform provider. So that is a risk. But for some, that makes more sense, because now you can still have these different best of breed systems that are really good at what they do, and you don't have to compromise. You don't have to necessarily rip out those systems in the name of having one single ERP system that's going to water down some of your competitive advantages. So I think it's smart. I'll be curious to see, obviously it's worked for them so far. It's gotten them to be the number 4, they're clearly the number 4 ERP provider. I think some metrics put them actually higher than that, but generally speaking, people put, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft as the big 3, and then Infor is right there, right behind them. So they're doing something that works. I'll be curious to see how they compete with, the SAPs of the world, the Oracles of the world, et cetera, longer term.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question from this conversation. What is your favorite part about the conference?
Well, I love, I like the keynotes and all the, the flashiness of these conferences. It's fun. It's cool. There's they spend a lot of time and money, from a marketing perspective to create this perception of fun and, excitement around their product and creating all this buzz. That's great stuff. I like that. But given the skeptic that I am, I also view it as what it is. It's marketing messaging and sales messaging. So actually my favorite part is when I sit down with Kevin, the CEO, and Soma, the president and CTO, because I've talked to them in the past, and I love talking to both those guys because they're both very smart. Soma's been around forever. I mean, he's been at Infor since the early days. So he knows, he's been impressive because he knows the legacy products, but he's also leading the charge on where they're headed in the future. So hearing it directly from them, more in an unscripted, candid way, that's my favorite part, honestly, which getting them together, at the same event is difficult, as you can imagine. So being at a conference like this, to be able to do that is a lot of fun. And I learn a lot every time I come to one of these events.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was a great conversation overall. And just a different perspective today, being on site interviewing people.
Yeah, good stuff. And now that we've talked about Infor, let's go to one of the other big ERP providers for the remainder of the show. We'll talk about SAP, and we'll talk about SAP customers. If you're a legacy SAP customer and you're using ECC, or maybe even you're still using R3, If you're using one of these legacy SAP systems, maybe you're threatened by or concerned about the vendor deadline that's been put in place to sunset maintenance and support for the products. You might be trying to figure out, what do I do? Do I just roll the dice and stay on my current system? Do I roll the dice and go with a big, expensive, risky upgrade? What are my options, and what should I be thinking about? So that's what we want to do here today, is provide an objective framework for what to think about. And actually, we're coming at this video that I posted in my YouTube channel recently. This video comes at it from the angle of, what if you don't go with S4HANA now? What are your options? So we've covered a lot in this podcast, why you should go to S4HANA, what the pros and cons are. We're going to come at it more from devil's advocate of why maybe you should think about not doing it. And what does that look like? It creates potentially longer term risk, but it might be short term, intermediate term, might be an okay answer for you. And it actually is a lot more feasible than you might think. So let's roll the clip and then we'll come back and chat about it.
We have several clients we're working with right now that are trying to navigate the decision or the journey to go from SAP ECC to S4HANA. And there's a lot of reasons why you might want to do it. You might want to do it because SAP is telling you to. They're going to cut off maintenance. It might be because you're worried about all that old customization and all that baggage you built up within the old system. It might be because you have a fear of being left behind. Maybe you want to adopt more AI capabilities. So I understand there's a whole lot of reasons why you might be considering S4HANA. But we also have a lot of customers that are very nervous about making that transition, and they should be. There's a lot of reasons why you might want to consider staying put on ECC, at least for the time being. And I want to provide you an alternative way of thinking about this, not to convince you to stay with ECC necessarily, but to make sure that you're making an objective and sound decision about moving towards S4HANA versus staying put on ECC. So what I want to do today in today's video is talk about some of the reasons why you might want to stay on ECC. And if any of these points resonate with you here today, it may be that it's appropriate for you to stay put with ECC. Now, in addition to the content I'm going to share with you in today's video, I also encourage you to read our guide to successful S4HANA implementations. Whether or not you've actually started on your journey, or if you're just thinking about whether or not you should move from ECC to S4HANA, this guide will help you make the decision and will help guide you on the journey if you do decide to move forward with S4HANA. And we share in this guide some of the best practices we've learned from having helped so many organizations through their S4HANA upgrades. So you can read that by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. Now, one of the top reasons, if not the top reason, why clients of ours are making the move to S4HANA is because they're worried about SAP discontinuing support in 2030. And this is a valid concern. If your software vendor is going to stop supporting the product, they're going to stop investing R&D dollars in it, that is something you should be concerned about long term. However, in the short term, it may not be as dire or urgent as SAP would like you to believe. There are third-party support options out there that will buy you some time. And I don't mean just a couple of years. I mean now until 2040. So you've got a solid 15 years of potential coverage that you have if you need it from a third party. Just because SAP isn't providing it doesn't mean you can't get it elsewhere. Now, examples of companies that are providing this third-party support include companies like Rimini Street and Spinnaker. Those are probably the two biggest ones here globally, and they will provide support for years to come. Now, another interesting thing as it relates to third-party support and maintenance is at the time I'm recording this video, the European Union is actually investigating SAP for potential antitrust behavior related to third-party maintenance and support. In other words, the government is starting to probe whether or not SAP is trying to keep customers from buying third-party maintenance options, or at the very least, they're making it very difficult for them to move toward a third-party solution. So keep an eye on that case, because I think that's going to set the tone for how SAP treats this whole discontinuation of support going forward. They may still decide to discontinue the product, but I think it's going to make it easier longer term for customers to stay put on ECC and find third-party options elsewhere, especially if SAP sticks with their 2030 deadline. Arguably, the top reason why you may not want to move from ECC to S4HANA right now is that S4HANA implementations are extremely risky. We are working with a number of clients right now that have troubled implementations, and we're helping them recover and get back on track. And it's not a technology problem per se necessarily. It's not just the technology that's a problem, although that is part of it. Part of the reason is because S4HANA is a totally different product than ECC. Part of it is also because so many customers are used to the flexibility that ECC has that they get into S4HANA and find that it's culture shock. They can't figure out how they're going to untangle all this customization that they've developed over the years in ECC, and it becomes more of a jump or more of a gap between where they are today and where they need to move towards with S/4HANA. And it's not enough for SAP to reassure you that you can just start with a clean core, you can just use their best practices. That's all marketing nonsense. The reality is you need what you need out of your system or systems, and you need to make sure that you understand what the risks are and how big of an adjustment this is going to be to move to S/4HANA. So the fact that S/4HANA is a risky endeavor, a lot of companies are struggling with it right now, and a lot of companies are resisting the move to S/4HANA for that very reason. Those are all things that you should take into consideration before deciding to move forward with an S/4HANA implementation. Another reason why it may not make sense to move from ECC to S/4HANA is because much of your intellectual property, much of your secret sauce, your competitive advantages are probably tied up in ECC, largely because it's a flexible product and largely because you probably invested heavily in customization, for better or for worse. Now, SAP may look down on you and tell you you shouldn't have customized the software, or you're customizing the software because you're resisting change. That could be partially true, but chances are pretty high if you have customization in ECC that there's some intellectual property, there's some competitive advantage that you've built, and something that's going to be very hard to replicate, if not impossible to replicate, in S/4HANA. Reason being that S/4HANA Cloud is a less flexible solution than ECC. It just is. So you're going to have to adapt and conform to SAP in the way it works, whether you like it or not, whether it works for you or not. And SAP will try to convince you that those are best practices and you need to start with a clean core, but it's not that easy. You can't throw out all those years of R&D that you've built and all those years of innovation, especially if it's something that's unique to you that gives you a competitive advantage over others in your industry. So before moving to S/4HANA, it's really important to understand what customization you have and how important that customization is or isn't to you. If you've customized for no reason or you can't justify that customization, then sure, maybe it does make sense to move to S/4HANA. But if you've built something unique for you, your secret sauce, you may want to think twice about it. Another big reason why you should think about staying put on ECC rather than upgrading to S/4HANA is because there may not be a business case justification for it. If you are considering S/4HANA, I have to ask you this. Have you built a business case? And if so, can you clearly justify that investment you're about to make with measurable business value? I'm going to guess that most of you will probably answer no to that question, as do most of our clients. It is just very difficult to justify making a move from a software that's very proven, it's very stable, it's very flexible, and by system, I mean ECC. It's very difficult to justify making that move from ECC to a brand new S/4HANA implementation. Now, when I ask if there's a business case justification, I'm not talking about intangible things like we have to because we have to get rid of technical debt, or we have to because SAP is cutting off maintenance. Those are different issues. What I'm talking about is actual measurable value that's going to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of your operations. Now, if you can do that, then sure, certainly go ahead with your S/4HANA implementation. But if you can't justify via a reliable and objective business case that SAP has not given to you, by the way, then you need to question whether or not it's the right path for you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you that you should absolutely not upgrade to S/4HANA. For some of you, yes, that will be the answer. But for some of you, it may be that you do want to move to S/4HANA. It may make perfect sense for you. So again, if you have the right business case and you can justify it clearly with the cost benefit, then move forward with it. It's just important in that case that you have a very clear, realistic understanding of what the cost is, because too often organizations severely underestimate the time and cost it takes to move to S/4HANA. You also want to make sure you have an accurate and clear objective understanding of what the real business benefits are, because again, organizations too often overstate the business benefits, largely because SAP and their system integrators will often tell you that the benefits are greater than they really are. You may be on a really old version of ECC that hasn't been upgraded in a really long time. In that case, you probably might need to move forward with a S/4HANA implementation. And then finally, what I would say is even if you do decide to stay with ECC for now and invest in other areas, I would say or encourage you to think about longer term what you might do. Because if you stay on ECC for too long, at some point, maintenance is going to run out. At some point, it's going to be harder to find resources that know ECC, and it's going to be more difficult to support that environment in the long term. But if we're just looking at the next 3 to 5 years, it may be that there's other options out there that are meant to help you through your digital modernization journeys.
Okay, so that was the video on my YouTube channel that recently posted about long live ECC and why you might consider staying on ECC rather than moving to S4HANA, as SAP and others in the SAP community might want to. So with all that being said, Darian, what were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that video?
Yeah, I thought you made some great points. I have a couple follow-up questions from this video. One being, what frameworks can help quantify ROI for ECC versus S4HANA?
Well, that is a great question, because this is something that a lot of our clients struggle with, is not just the framework, but how do I or can I show a positive ROI of moving from ECC to S4HANA? And to be candid, I've yet to see a credible business case, a realistic business case that justifies the investment and the risk to move from ECC to S4. Now, the problem with traditional business case frameworks is that, I don't want to say it's a problem because it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a problem when you're trying to justify something that doesn't have a clear ROI, is you want to look at tangible, quantifiable, realistic metrics. And that's the problem SAP is running into right now, is they have trouble, and it's not even SAP's problem. It's the customers who are trying to figure out if they should move from ECC to R3 or to S4. They're trying to figure out where those business value areas are. And there might be some minor incremental value from, having a faster system or potentially having a more integrated system. But for most of these customers that we work with, they have a highly customized ECC environment, which, for better or for worse, in many cases it's for better, because they've customized the solution to do what they want it to do. It fits their business really well. They've gotten a good deal of ROI out of it. In many cases, they're not really paying for it anymore. They're just paying a incremental annual support and maintenance fee. So you look at that cost for a system that's working. Where is the business value to move to a more modern platform? Now, that's the key, is it's a more modern platform. Longer term, it's going to be more viable. You're going to get more benefits with AI and stuff like that longer term. But the problem is, right now, customers don't see it. It may be 5-10 years from now, the ROI will be clear. But when SAP is saying, hey, we're going to cut off support, you need to move now, they're looking at this saying, but why? I mean, it doesn't make sense from a financial risk perspective. So to answer your question, there's nothing fancy about it. You just look at measurable, quantifiable ROI in terms of efficiency gains, how it might increase your revenue, how it might decrease your costs longer term. But spoiler alert, it's probably going to increase your cost longer term, because S4HANA is going to cost you more than what you're paying right now on ECC. And I don't want to, I know I'll probably get comments in the chat here. I don't want to say I don't want to hear it, but I've heard it before, where people will say that, but think of all the cost you're going to save by not having to maintain ECC. I still don't. There's nowhere close to a justifiable business case there, in my opinion, in most cases. So if you do it, unfortunately, in most cases, it's got to be for strategic reasons, which, in my opinion, is not a good reason to do it, which is why I'm so critical of and skeptical of this forced migration path that many SAP customers are on. I think it's more important for them to take control and do what makes sense to them. And if they want to go S4HANA, certainly do it. We have a couple of clients right now. They're starting on S4HANA. They're in fact, they're moving from a non-SAP environment, though. In fact, and I would say it's actually a lot easier to justify an S4HANA implementation when you're not on ECC, oddly enough. It's almost like SAP has built such good products over the years that it's now hurting them, because it's harder to justify. There's not as big of a jump from ECC to S4HANA in terms of business value or business benefit. Whereas if, for example, we have one client that's using a really old version of Lawson, highly customized 25, 30-year-old implementation, they're moving to S4HANA. And while that's a bigger risk and it's a bigger lift for them to move from Lawson to S4HANA on one hand, on the other hand, the business benefit and the potential value they could get out of that is so great, because they're moving to a really modern system and that sort of thing. So it's almost like if you're not an SAP customer, it's going to be a lot easier to justify than if you are an ECC customer. And if you do justify it, it's probably for reasons other than tangible ROI.
That's super interesting. Something I wouldn't have thought of, except for you explaining it there. But yeah, super great video and great podcast today overall.
Yeah, thank you for all the great questions, and thanks to the audience for the great participation and questions here as well. Thank you to Infor for hosting us here at Infor Velocity this week. in allowing us to do the podcast here and talk to their customers and executives, et cetera. So really appreciate that. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. In the meantime, check out transformationgroundcontrol.com for all the past episodes you might have missed. And feel free to reach out to me if you want to brainstorm ideas or chat about your digital transformation. If you'd like a free health check, free assessment of how your project is going or what you're thinking, we're happy to do that for you pro bono, just to get to know you and your organization and your team. So feel free to reach out. I've included my contact information below if you'd like to take me up on that offer. In the meantime, have a great week. We'll see you on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control.